All right. We call the regular city council meeting of the city of Clearlake to order at Clearlake City Hall Council Chambers, 14050 Olympic Drive, Clearlake, California, at 6 p.m. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Overton. Councilmember Kramer.
Here.
Councilmember Claffey.
Here.
Vice Mayor Purdock.
Here.
And Mayor Slutin.
Here. We're going to pledge of allegiance. Councilman Claffey, would you do the honor?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Vice Mayor Purdock, do you do a small invocation?
Sure. Our kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we call on you to join us this evening and have your Spirit to be with us as we make decisions for the betterment of this city. For the staff, we ask for a special blessing that they'd be safe as they go out to serve this community. And for our community, we ask for a special blessing of wellness, wholeness, and hope. Father, in our world there are strife and trouble. We ask that you would be with those who need comforting, heal those who need your helping hand. We say all this and ask for this in your Son's holy name. Amen.
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 All right. Do we have any changes to the agenda, Mr. Flora?
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
Make a motion to accept the agenda as submitted.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Purdock and a second by Councilman Kramer. We'll go to our voting.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, could you tell the results, please?
Motion passes with a unanimous vote of the council.
We have a presentation of March adoptable dogs. I saw one running around here earlier. Is Charmaine still out there?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Lieutenant Snyder is not with us tonight because he's finishing up a 2-day leadership course with Lieutenant Hobbs, so I'll be doing the report. This is Sassy. Sassy is a female mix. She is spayed, all vaccinations are current, and she's microchipped. She's fairly active for her age, which is 10 years old. She loves a brisk walk and one-on-one playtime. For further information on Sassy, contact the Clearlake Animal Control Shelter staff at 707-273-9440. If you'd like to see Sassy in person, you can visit our animal shelter at 6820 Old Highway 53 in Clearlake, Monday through Friday from 12 to 4 p.m. by appointment.
Charmaine, because of where the camera is, can you come right up to Alan here?
Still not on camera. Watch the TV. Watch the TV.
The other way.
Over this way.
Oh, we got it.
This way. Towards us. Want to get them on TV?
There you go. Yep.
Keep coming back towards us.
Towards, yeah.
Back.
There you
back.
go.
There you go.
Look at that. Make Sassy do her tricks.
That's it.
She's retired.
Oh, really?
Oh, she needs to be adopted.
1 year.
You think she's the pound dog?
Looks like it.
Older dog.
Maybe we'll have to adopt her as a staff dog.
All right.
All right, we'll continue on with the animal shelter statistics. So from January to yesterday, we've had 74 dogs come into the shelter. For dispositions, we've had 88 leave the shelter. It's not magic numbers, but those include intakes from last year. 56 rescues, 15 returned to owner, 16 adopted, 1 euthanized, leaving our live release rate at 98.8%.
Wow, awesome.
Good work, Charmaine. We also would like to recognize our partnership with North Bay Humane with helping get us a number of dogs out of the shelter. So, thank you.
Right. Thank you, Chief White. This is time for public comment. The time for any member of the public to address the city council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the council or staff to discuss issues brought forth under public comment. The council cannot take action on non-agenda items, and concerns may be referred to staff or placed on the next available agenda. Please note that comments from the public will also be taken on each agenda item, and comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody on Zoom that wants to make a public comment?
We do have one hand raised on Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
So that would be Hannah. It, One second. Some technical difficulties.
Maybe I should read, I have one public comment here. Maybe I can read that in the meantime.
Okay.
Okay, this is from Suzanne Holt at 14777 El Camino Real. She says, I live on El Camino Real, and it is considered a private road. This road is absolutely horrible to drive on. It has destroyed our vehicles, and many people can't even drive on it. I'm trying to find out how to get my road to become a city-maintained road. Obviously, we cannot think, so we'll refer it to staff on that. All right, in the meantime, Hannah was able to,
It looks like that person has dropped off the Zoom. So
we'll
there
go,
are no further hands raised.
okay, we'll go to item number G, the consent agenda. Do we have any people, anyone who wants to pull an item on this? If not, I'll prefer the public. Anybody from the public wants to pull the item? If not, bring it back to the council. I just want to have a comment on the item number 3, the splash pad. Yeah, I assume that's going to be in Austin Park, and any timing on that is going to be done by the,
We don't have to poll to discuss it unless you want to consider it separately. Yeah, I could give a look. Yeah, so so there's 2 parts to this. We're purchasing the equipment. This is purchased through like a state contract. So we didn't do a competitive bidding separately than the state contract. The installation and pouring the pad itself and connecting to the utilities is out for bid right now. I think the 31st, maybe, the end of this month is when the bids are due. So we'll bring that contract back to the council when that comes in. But it's a pretty cool project. Yeah, it'll be in Austin Park between the dog park and like the basketball courts there, that little grassy area. We designed it. There's some renderings in the packet, so I'm sure you took a look at those. But in coordination with the Khoi tribe, so it's a Native American theme, and excited about getting that done. I don't know. My hope was that we'd be able to have a grand opening around Memorial Day weekend, but we'll see if we can get it done quite that fast. It'll be a pretty fast project. We just have to get the water and sewer lines over there, and so.
that has to be on sewer. All right, awesome. All right, can I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by Councilman Claffey. We'll go to our voting. Madam Clerk, could you read the result of the vote?
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Go to business. This is item number 13, award of contract for demolition of structures and abatement of properties located at 3400 Oleander Street, 3864 Liddell Street, 14514 Emory, 15586 33rd Avenue, 1583 40th Avenue, and 14220 Pearl Street, and 3395 4th Street in Clearlake. Mr. Lambert.
Can't help you there.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. This on?
It's green light.
Green light's on.
So the reason I'm here today is to ask you to allow the city manager to execute a contract with HD Excavating in the amount of $69,150 for the demolition and abatement of 7 properties within the city of Clearlake. Again, that's the purpose of the hearing. The first property is 3407 Oleander Street. The case was opened in 2018. 22 compliance inspections have been performed, and administrative citations have been issued.
It's a little more than a fixer.
Tell me.
The next property is 3864 Liddell Avenue. Case was opened in October of 2018. 21 compliance inspections have been performed without any compliance, and administrative citations have been issued.
Unless we don't have smell-o-vision.
14514 Emory Avenue. The case was opened in May of 2017. 23 compliance inspections have been performed with no compliance, and administrative citations have been issued. One 5586 33rd Avenue. Case was opened in October of 2020. 17 compliance inspections without any compliance. No administrative citations were issued. The property owner is deceased. One 5783 40th Avenue. Case was opened in February of 2021. 11 compliance inspections without any compliance, and additionally, this property owner is deceased as well. One 4220 Pearl Street. The case was opened in July of 2019. 16 compliance inspections without compliance, and this is another one where the property owner is deceased. (3395) 4th Street. Case was opened in January of 2020. 27 compliance inspections without compliance, and the property owners have been issued administrative citations. So the background, each of the 7 properties were deemed to be a health and safety hazard as well as a public nuisance. Ample time has been given to the property owners to voluntarily have the violations abated. The property owners failed to abate the hazards and nuisances, and each of the 7 properties failed to comply with an abatement order after that. They all remain in the same conditions as they were prior, and the city advertised for a bid for the demolition and abatement of the 7 properties. 2 companies were represented at the mandatory pre-bid meeting on March the 9th of this year, and 2 companies submitted bids today. Staff recommends council to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with HD Excavating in the amount of $69,150.
Okay, we have any questions from staff?
I just want to thank you for sending the pictures over. I appreciated that, having a little look at them before time was nice, so.
Okay, we'll open it to the public. Oh, go ahead.
If I could just add one comment, I mean, takes a lot of time to bring some of these bad cases to conclusion. I'm not sure when it happened in the process, but Mr. Lambert mentioned voluntary compliance, so we did start down the path with at least one other property that the property owner ended up abating themselves, so obviously that's the solution we would like to have, but sometimes there's no other choice but to take this type of action.
This will be, they'll have a lien put against their property.
So after it's completed, we have to issue a invoice for 30 days. If they don't pay it by that, after the end of the 30 days, then it gets put as a lien and special assessment.
And you've broke it out, those liens are different from each property, or how did that?
We have, it's included in your packets.
Okay, if there are no other questions from staff, we open to the public. Any from the public has a comment? Please state your name when you get up there, Terry.
My name is Terry Stewart. I'm a concerned citizen of our fine city. And first of all, I'd like to commend the action of code enforcement and hopefully the council to okay this initial step at eradicating blight in our city, because there's blight everywhere. Within 200 feet of the building we're standing in, there are burnt down houses that have been there, some of them in excess of 5 years. And you drive all over this city, what do you see? You see burnt down hulks everywhere. And it's not only ridiculous for the people living here, but it affects everyone. It affects the people that want to come into our city and think about relocating here. People that may want to be seeking a job, they drive around looking for a place to live and they go, oh my God, I don't want to live there. Look, this goddamn place looks like a war zone. You know, and I don't know where the city's going to get the money to do this, because I understand we have to pony up the money, and hopefully it's a lot that'll sell someday. It gets a lien put on it. It's complicated. It takes time. So I understand the city's fronting the money on this. And so, I don't know how much money is available in the budget every year to do this, but it's a definite priority in my mind. That's part of cleaning up the blight and making our city a more beautiful, desirable place, not only for the residents, but for prospective residents that may be coming in here. And wanting to, people, our companies, our staffing issues that we have everywhere, at the hospital, at the city, at everywhere there's staffing issues. And I hear from employers constantly in this town that, hey, I get people that show up to interview and they drive around and they look at what's available where they could live here, and they're out of here. So anyway, I hope the city council approves this, and I hope they can find a lot more money to keep working on the rest of the projects that I'm sure Mr. Lambert's well aware of are out there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any comments, any more public comment? Please state your name, please.
My name is Tony Sarkis. I don't have much to say, but I actually walked by the 33rd Avenue location. It looks much worse than what those pictures show. And I went for a photo session and I took pictures right in front of them. And I want to echo what this gentleman was saying. There's so much blight. It causes what's known as economic obsolescence. I'm sure you guys, you're a lawyer, you know what that means. So as of right now, there's a major housing shortage, and houses are selling for top dollar in Clearlake, and it's not because this is a desirable place. Does that make sense? It should be the other way around. We want good property values because this is a desirable place to live. That's about all I got. I mean, I have a lot more to say, but I'm not gonna say it right now. But the property on 33rd is pretty bad, and it's actually into the street now. It didn't show it in those pictures, but if an emergency vehicle had to get by it, I mean, there would be just inches on either side. So it's, that's a bad situation. And there's another house, you saw it, the one across the street from me, it's all boarded up. And the lady, she finally moved, she wasn't paying rent. So,
Thank you, sir.
that's all I gotta say. I appreciate what you're doing.
Any additional comments from the public? Do we have anybody on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
So we have one person on Zoom. So go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, this comment isn't regarding what you guys were just speaking about. This is, am I able to do public comment on something else?
If it's on the agenda, if it still has to come on the agenda, you can do it at that time.
Oh,
This person
Well,
was the one who submitted the public comment. Your public comment was read during public comment period and referred to staff.
oh, okay. I didn't know that I had a public
The
comment.
written comment?
Oh, yes, okay.
Okay.
So I don't get to speak on that then?
Your comment was read during public comment and was referred to staff, so we'll,
Okay. Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you so much.
Any additional comments on this item, Madam Clerk, in Zoom land?
no further hands are raised within the Zoom.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. Councilman Kramer.
I think we're ready. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that City Council authorize the city manager to execute a contract for the demolition and abatement of properties located at 3407 Oleander Street, 3864 Liddell Avenue, 14514 Emory Avenue, 15586 33rd Avenue, 15783 40th Avenue, 14220 Pearl Street, and 3395 4th Street, Clearlake, California.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by Vice Mayor Purdock. We'll go to our voting.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, do you know the results from the vote, please?
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you.
We'll go to item number 14. Thank you, Lynn. This is an item continued from last meeting. This is one of my items, and I want to reassure the council that there were some comments made that it might be a duplication for something the county health, behavioral health is doing, but in my conversations with the county, it is not. It's the ethics course is the same kind of thing or close to that we all have to do at councilman every 2 years, and that goes by the Fair Political Practice Commission. The other part that I want to basically relate again, that this is just for this amount, and if there's any future cost involved, it will come back to the council to talk about. Hopefully that will give some assurance to the council that this is not an open-end kind of thing. So if you have any questions, go ahead, Mr.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Any questions from the
Well, I did have
council?
a question, just what was the ask again for people who may not have listened in last week, or
Okay.
last meeting?
The council is being asked to consider a cost-sharing agreement for the expenses related to facilitation of a community visioning forum. The background of this is that in March of 2021, Lake County Board of Supervisors established an ad hoc committee. The Community Visioning Forum Planning Commission plans to plan a community visioning forum with the intent of developing recommendations to meaningful action and activity that identify, eliminate barriers, promote local governance that hears and honors all voices, build bridges where there may be walls, foster tolerance, respect, equity, and inclusion, beginning with education, culminating in action, promoting nonviolence and nonviolent conflict resolution, focus resources on underlying causes and conditions to lead to inequitable resources and justice distribution. There's a whole list of other things. It's in your package if you have any additional questions. Anybody from the council? Go ahead.
Budget-wise, do we have a, comment on the cost for this? That he
Yeah.
wants to,
Well, it's excuse me, $8,000 is what the request is.
and is that something that we can put into our budget, or, I mean, it's,
Well-
I mean, since it hasn't been really brought up in our budget.
Yeah, we did include an adjustment in the mid-year adjustments in anticipation that the council may want to do this, so.
Why is the difference between the city of Clear Lake contribution and the Lakeport contribution?
It's based on population.
Population rate?
And so basically, if you have 65,000 or 66,000, so it kind of relates to population.
And if I remember right.
Go ahead, Madam.
Okay, so remember, this is gonna be training people also, right? There's gonna be a training process here for staff,
Yes.
for all staff?
For
and-
whoever wants to be
Right,
involved.
For whoever, so we're gonna have something here, and they're gonna train whoever wants to come here and get trained. Is that the concept of
Yes.
this? Okay.
All right. No more questions from me. Can we open it up to the public? Madam Clerk, do we have anybody on Zoom land who wants to make a comment on it? Or anybody here in the audience wants to make a comment? If not, anybody on Zoom land, Madam Clerk?
We do have 2 hands raised on Zoom, as well as an emailed public comment. So if you'd like, I can read the emailed public comment.
Please.
It says, "Good evening, my name is Carol Cole Lewis, resident of Upper Lake and a member of the fledgling Citizens Committee that birthed the Community Visioning Forum. This comment is directed toward Agenda Item H14, consideration of cost-sharing agreement for expenses related to facilitation of community visioning forums. In 2011, the Lake County Board of Supervisors approved and presented a proclamation in support of the Lake County Charter for Compassion that included a call to county residents for renewed respect and compassion. At its heart, the Charter for Compassion activates the Golden Rule, traditionally stated as do unto others as you would have them do unto you. A decade later, the call for compassion is still strong. In 2021, the Board of Supervisors unanimously approved and presented another proclamation, one of promoting tolerance, respect, equity, and inclusion toward all. As a part of this proclamation, the board committed to host a community visioning forum to add some accountability towards the proclamation's broad hopes and wishes. I am filled with optimism today. We live in a world of deep division where the only chance of healing and renewal begins with actions taken first within ourselves, then within the local communities in which we live. I'm thrilled to see Clearlake, Lakeport, and the county at the vanguard of creating a better world by spearheading efforts to enable conversation with and building positive relationships between and among all our residents, red, blue, and every shade in between, and the people who serve in positions within our governments. I am also thrilled that the cities and the County of Lake recognize the importance of utilizing a trained facilitator such as Ms. Anderson to assist us in these efforts. Training the trainer is a smart way to build upon the positive impact her group has already had on our community, and a Train the Trainer program ensures we can carry forward this vital and important work long after Ms. Anderson's time with us is complete. I urge you to approve the cost-sharing agreement for expenses related to the facilitation of community visioning forums, and I look forward to anticipation to a time where our community lives and breathes and thrives by the golden rule. Thank you. And we have 2 hands raised on Zoom. The first was Cheryl Allman. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Thank you very much. I did comment on this last month because I wasn't sure whether there was collaboration with other organizations. I have learned there is, so I support this. Thank you very much for the time to investigate it a little further. That's the end.
Thank you.
Next is Joanne Sakato.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Slutin and council members. My name is Joanne Sakato and I'm a resident of Cobb Mountain. I wish to thank the council for consideration of engaging in the cost-sharing agreement for Ms. Anderson's services, and particularly for the city sitting at the table since the formation of the Community Vision Forum Planning Committee meetings. It seems inherently valuable to have all jurisdictions within the county working together on this very important issue. And I can particularly see critical value for the city's participation in the community forums. If we're to learn together, the issues that are facing our collective citizenry and offer a meaningful and heartfelt response. The work with Ms. Anderson is intended to empower our jurisdictions to individually and or collectively carry on this work far beyond her time with us, giving hope that future generations will not have to endure the pain of our ancestors and current brethren and sisters, and that our children of today will have the best opportunity for success in their lives and in their children's lives. So thank you again for the consideration of engaging in this agreement.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? If not, bring it back to the council. Councilman Kramer.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council authorize the city manager to enter into the cost-sharing agreement with the County of Lake and City of Lakeport for the hosting of community visioning forums.
We have a motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by Councilman Claffey. We'll go to our electronic voting.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, could you tell me the result of the vote?
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to me, and things wanted a little bit more information was very helpful for this process. So thanks again. All right, we'll go now to item. Let me get to the right spot here. Okay, item number 15, discussion and consideration of financing options to facilitate additional road maintenance projects. Mr. Flora.
Yeah, so we'll have initial presentation by Finance Director Young, who's going to go through a fair bit of information. Then we have a few of our friends from NHA advisors here, which will give a little bit more specifics. And then Mr. Schwartz and myself will go over some kind of project ideas, and we'll see where it goes from there. So Ms. Young actually has significant experience with this type of financing with her work with the City of Dallas and the City of San Antonio. I think she's been involved in something like $700 billion in bond issuance or something. I might be exaggerating slightly, but go ahead.
Is it on? Oh, good. There we go. Okay, thank you. So yes, I have been involved in bond programs in the past with City of San Antonio and the City of Dallas, just over about $2 billion worth of projects over 3 different programs. So I'm very excited to kind of discuss this and see if this is if this makes sense for the city of Clearlake. So if you all don't mind, I am going to share my presentation. There, wait. There we go. All right. And then just quickly, just as Alan, our city manager, had just mentioned, we are just going to go over, do an overview of strategy options, talk about some of our recommendations, and then NHA will kind of come on and answer some more questions, and then we'll go into discussion of projects, and then we'll have an opportunity for more questions and discussions. So again, my name is Kelsey Young. I'm the finance director for the city of Clearlake, and very excited to talk about this particular project because I think it's an interesting strategy for us to discuss. Okay, so as you all are well aware, we have many road projects that as a city we need to focus on. If we move forward with financing, we would be looking at 15 to 18 million worth of projects in today's dollars. And we'd be looking at large projects in concentrated areas because that's going to be the most economical. We'd also be looking at areas that have high density of homes so that we can have the most impact to those neighborhoods. We would be looking at public streets, right now only public streets, and then we'd be looking at a combination of chip seal, full depth reclamation, and maintenance. And we really want to look at sort of neighborhood transformative projects, things that can really elevate our neighborhoods in general. So the benefits of moving forward with this type of large project are we'd be adding paved roads to over 2,000 residents. We would be looking at adding investments, an investment interest to new businesses and developers. As you were mentioning, we want to make Clearlake a place that people want to come to and feel comfortable being in. And then this would improve the overall reputation of the city. We want people to be driving around here and liking what they see. Then additionally, this would provide better access to existing businesses, and it would increase road safety. So we know that this is something that we want to move forward with. So there's two potential strategies to complete these road projects. We would be looking at using Measure V funds that we already have coming in. The two strategies would be pay-go, so we would be paying as we go for each project, which is what we're continuing, like what we're doing right now, or looking at debt financing. So pay-go, as I mentioned, that's what we're doing right now. Right now we're looking at an average about 1.5 million in projects per year. That means having smaller projects. While 1.5 million feels like a large amount of money, it gets eaten up pretty quickly with road projects. So we would be looking at piecemealing larger projects. And then this overall project that we just talked about would be completed in about 13 to 15 years. It also will be a little bit harder to complete maintenance projects just because we will be constantly chasing these projects as we're moving forward. It's entirely possible to do it this way. It just would require a lot more time to complete it. Other option is debt financing. We would be looking at doing all of those projects completed in 1 to 3 years. Then we would have repayment of that debt financing over 10 to 15 years. We would be using Measure V resources to pay back that debt financing each year. Right now, Measure V brings in about an average of 2.5 million. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we're projecting that will look as we're moving forward. And then our annual debt service could potentially be about 1.5 million per year. That would be paying out of Measure V. We wouldn't want to go any higher than that because we would want to be able to still have additional resources in Measure V. Okay, so I did some projections based on these assumptions. So if we're looking at a project cost of 15 million and paying back an annual debt service of 1.5 million, there is some flexibility in this project, so this is why I just am using these as assumptions. And then we did a bond amortization of 13 years so that we had entirely paid back all of our debt financing within 13 years. We'd be looking potentially at a bond rate of 2.75% interest rate. right now, a conservative estimate of an inflation rate would be about 4%. You know, we've been talking about 7% interest rate or inflation rates and so forth, so I just averaged a little bit lower than that. So looking at that, we have a pay-go estimate of best case scenario of us being able to complete all of those projects within 13 years with the current project cost. Looking at inflation, it would be about 25 million by the end of those 13 years. With a financing option with the same assumptions of 15 million project cost, looking at a project timeline of 3 years, we would be just under 17 million. So there's definitely a significant savings just right there. So I broke it out in a couple other ways to look at it, since we are talking about having various options, where looking at 15 million is our current project cost, and then just under 17 million if we do the whole bond, or if we complete all these projects within 3 years, which is our worst case scenario of financing. We're hoping we could complete it a little bit faster than that, but still, 3 years is realistic. Or taking it out to 13 years, which is about 25 million. If we take it all the way out to trying to complete the project within 15 years, which would be our pay-go model, that takes it to about just over 27 million. Okay, so in order to really, really look at the potential numbers as well, looking again at worst case scenario with financing, if we have our project cost and it's completed in 3 years, and we're looking at 4% inflation and adding our interest in there, we now are at 21 million. If we look at our best case scenario of pay-go, we are looking at about 25 million for the project to be completed in 13 years with 4% inflation. So one of our concerns, and one of the things that we've really wanted to look at, is will we have enough funding from Measure V to be able to support this, and possibly to have additional funds to do other projects outside of this program as well. So we looked at Measure P, and City Manager Flora did a fantastic analysis of everything clear back from fiscal year 2006, 2007, all the way through fiscal year 23-24. And while we didn't have Measure V until fairly recently, we did have Measure P, and Measure V is just twice Measure V. So we were able to project pretty much what our trend has been over the past little while. And we've been able to show that we're getting about a 4%, a little bit over, growth on average. Even through the Great Recession, we did have a little bit of a dip, then we went back up, and then we've been steadily climbing ever since, which means we are getting, or we can expect to continue to get Measure V funds with this type of growth rate. So if that is the case, then we're looking at a continuous 4%, which is a little less than what we've actually been showing, but equals out with our inflation rate, 4% of an annual growth rate, which would continue to grow until through fiscal year 36-37. And we'd be looking at close to $5 million at that point. So if you look down here, this is the max proposed debt service that we would have, that 1.5 million. So we would still have funds to continue a pay-go project as well as a debt financing project, which is very exciting. It's sort of the best of both worlds if we decide to move forward with this process. So one of the things that having some sort of debt financing program would really allow us to do is we'd be able to go ahead and complete all of the roads at once, and then we can continue maintenance throughout while we're completing some of our other roads. So the average cost to maintain roads equals about 10% of a total rehab cost, and an optimal maintenance, should be done about every 5 to 7 years. And by doing this consistent maintenance, it would increase road life expectancy by 10 to 15 years. This is breaking it down a little bit more to show the specific type of treatments and so forth, but I won't go into all of these things. But it is showing that by block, the cost of a reconstruction is significantly more than the cost of some of the various maintenances. And as you can see, the amount of life expectancy that adding these maintenance options would increase the road life by. So basically, breaking that down, and y'all have to excuse me too, because I tend to think in numbers, so sometimes I get a little bit too much into the weeds here. But I did want you to have these details. So if you're looking at 10% of 15 million, we'd be looking at about a maximum of 1.5 million in maintenance costs every 5 years. And again, that could be 5 to 7 years. That would be a total of 4.5 million over 15 years. With no maintenance, these roads would need to be completely rehabilitated after every 15 years. But by being able to have the completion of the road projects done quickly and doing maintenance as a maximum of $19.5 million investment, we'd have roads that'd be lasting about 30 years, as opposed to having to go through and reclaim them every 15 years or having them get into a state that was a little bit less than desirable, we'll say. Another positive piece of going to something like a debt financing project is that we would be able to go ahead and bid out this project all at once. So we might be able to have one, maybe two contracts, as opposed to multiple contracts, which is how we're currently doing this. So looking at just staff time for one construction contract, we typically have to put it out to bid for 30 days. There's contract negotiation process for 20 days, and staff time ends up being about an average of about 64 hours per contract. By combining 13 contracts, which would just be one contract a year, into one contract instead of 13, all being done at once, we would be saving just over 19 weeks of staff time and just under 2 years of contract delays with the solicitation process. So this ends up being a lot more efficient, and there's a lot more opportunity for then staff to focus their energy on other projects. This also tends to lend to better pricing, because having one construction contract bid out, or even two, something along those lines, provides for much better economies of scale. Contractors tend to be far more interested in these projects. There's less mobilization costs, there's better material pricing, and so because of that, we can often attract the larger companies who can come in. We'll probably have more competition for this type of project, and we will get, that often leads to lower pricing in general too. Okay, so this is a very big commitment though. So should we choose to move forward, one of the things that we would recommend is discussing some sort of reserve policy. While it looks very much like we have a fantastic economic trend and we will be actually using inflation to support the city as opposed to chasing it if we move forward with this, we would want to make sure that we had something in place in case there is another recession, in case there is another pandemic, something along those lines. So one of the things that we're recommending is something along these lines, which would be scalable. We would put in a reserve of our annual Measure V revenue at 10% for the first year, and slowly bring it down to 7.5% the second year, 5% the third year, and then at that point we could reassess, does it seem like we still need to have reserves, or do we feel like we have a good enough cushion? Based on how much we are bringing in revenue from Measure V, this model would bring us to about $600,000, just based on our current $2.5 million per rate. So, because of this, staff, my personal recommendation, and as we've kind of discussed it throughout the team, we would recommend financing. Yes, there are some risks in that we would be sacrificing our budgetary flexibility. And If there is an economic downturn, there could potentially be some loss of revenues, and we would still have to make those debt payments. By having that reserve in place, I think that would mitigate most of those risks. And especially the type of financing that we're discussing is still a fairly conservative estimate. We could be financing more, but this seems to be perfect for the amount of revenue that we seem to be bringing in on average. And based on the benefits, we'd be looking at still historically low interest rates. Yes, they aren't climbing, so we would want to try to lock that in now, but it's still much lower than typically any of these programs have been in the past. We can hedge against that inflationary pressure, just like we've been talking about. It's going to continue to grow. If we can go ahead and do this now, we can actually be gaining that in our Measure V funds, which can be giving that back to our community. We know our budgetary costs. We know exactly how to plan and how to budget, and we can complete a significant number of projects now. If we decide to move forward, this would be sort of the estimated timeline that we're looking at. So here we are talking in City Council. We'd want to move very quickly if we do decide to move forward, and hopefully lock in our interest rate right away. Then it'll take about 60 days or so for all of that to be completed, and then we can look on receiving our funds. We'd already be moving forward on trying to work on getting the final selection of roads and deciding exactly what projects we wanted to start. Then in late 2022, we'd hope to bid out those road projects. And then in early 2023, we'd hope to bring that back to council and start that contract so that construction can begin. If we do move forward with this, time really will be of the essence, because we would want to lock in both that interest rate and then that bid pricing as soon as we could. All right, and then that's it from me. I can hand it over to NHA to kind of answer some more questions there and go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, thank you, Director Young. So Eric Scriven and his team are on the line, so I think Eric's going to go ahead. Sorry.
Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, you're a little quiet, so try to speak up as much as you can.
I will. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm not sure how much additional light we can shed. That was a very robust and comprehensive presentation. We did do some analysis as directed by your city manager to compare, again, in a different way, I would say, the inflationary impacts on a PAYGO program versus quantifying the cost of a financing, using interest and cost of issuance as your figures that add on to the amount of money that you're raising with a certain level of debt payment. So what we did, we did two types of analyses. One was for a 10-year financing, and one was for a 15-year financing. And we used three debt payment constraints for each of those options, I should say. $1 million each year, $1.25 million each year, and $1.5 million each year, which was the focus of your finance director's presentation, the $5 million program over a 13-year period. So we used a 10-year period and a 15-year period. We did confirm, as directed by your city manager, that the interest rates as they stand right now, the 2.5% for a 10-year program looks to be good. There might be a little bit of cushion in that at this moment in time, based on our evaluation of the city's credit, and the 2.75% for 15 years also looks to be a good number at this moment in time. And that was the interest rate that your finance director utilized for a 13-year financing. So at this moment, it does appear that these are good numbers for the analysis for City Council to evaluate. So this is a very complicated, it's a pretty busy slide for the 15-year program to compare the financing approach versus 3 different circumstances for a pay-go program. The 3 alternatives, or the 3 snapshots, if you will, for the pay-go, we utilize an inflation rate of 4% over the 15-year period on this slide, 6% over that 15-year period, and an 8% inflation rate over the 15-year period. And what we wanted to do was create an apples to apples comparison. If I focus here on this 15-year term with the $1 million annual debt service, you can see at the very top section, the financing project funding, you raise $11,975,000. The total payments, including interest, during that 15-year period is $14,961,350. So we deduct the amount of payments, we deduct the project funding out of those payments, and we come up with the interest and cost of issuance of approximately $2.986 million. So that is the comparison figure that we then look at to compare to a pay-go program where you use the same payments over that 15-year period, which is $14,961,350. It's just it's close to $1 million each year for those 15 years, but it's not precisely $1 million. We compare that payment over the next 15 years, and we discount that back utilizing a 4% inflation rate. And what is derived from that is a project funding of $11,089,233. We compare that $11,089,233 to the project, we compare that to the total payments, and we come up with how much that 4% inflation reduced the amount of proceeds for the same debt payments that you would pay for financing. And the figure that is derived is $3,872,117. So we compare that $3,872,117 to the financing interest plus cost of issuance number that we showed just above, $2,986,350, and we come up with a cost to the pay-go versus the financing of $885,767. So that is a very simple and straightforward approach to taking your money at 2.75 interest rate and paying that interest over 15 years and getting $11,975,000 in proceeds for projects versus a pay-go situation where you have that money worth less over each succeeding year during the 15 years because of inflation. And that costs you, where you're using $1 million over 15 years, as this example shows, $885,767. So this comparison figure is extrapolated for higher cost of inflation over the next 15 years, as well as using a higher annual debt payment of $1,250,000 or $1,500,000. All of these are consistent in the way we approach the analysis. What you can see is the larger the payment or the amount of money that you're trying to raise, and the longer the term of that repayment period, the costs for utilizing a pay-go approach versus funding it through a financing today increase significantly. I think there's a lot of numbers here, and I won't go into each one of them individually. What I might want to do is go to the summary page that has a chart that really we tried to graphically show, which I think makes sense in what I just said, the longer the transaction is and the more money that you're raising, if you want to use $1.5 million versus $1 million, the cost of the PAYGO program increased significantly versus the financing. And this chart summarizes those previous 2 pages where you can see the blue bar in each of these 6 scenarios is higher and becomes significantly higher than each of the PAYGO, the 3 PAYGO scenarios that are put right next to the blue bars. The gray being 4% inflation, the dark navy blue being 6%, and the teal bar being 8% over the term of the repayment period. With that, I think there's a lot of numbers here, and I do apologize. It's a different approach. I think that their finance director's approach was very clear and certainly accurate. This was just another approach that we thought might be useful for city council's evaluation. Glad to answer any questions on this slide before we move to the next.
Any questions from council here? None at this point.
Only
Go ahead.
question,
Councilman Kramer, go ahead.
I didn't see anything in there for, on the staff time, for the design work, time that it would take, and what we're gonna do with those streets that aren't within those dense areas that we plan to do, that you plan to do these projects on, where you can get the most bang for your buck. There'll be other streets that are not within those. Are they gonna be able to be addressed through monies outside of the financing?
Well, I mean, I guess if there's no questions on this, we can start talking more specifically about projects, and I think,
Oh, but you're gonna be doing that?
yeah, I think it might be easier to kind
Okay,
of look at the
that's
map
good.
and talk through that part of it, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Not sure if you have anything else you want to go over on this.
All right, still figuring out the microphone. No, I think, if you have any more questions regarding financing, either to me or for NHA, we're more than happy to go into it as much as we can. Otherwise, we're kind of looking at, this is talking a little bit more. Eric, did you want to go over any of these slides? This is talking a little bit more about maintenance costs and some other items there, or we could just jump right into the review of the projects and talk about that further.
I just had a question about maintenance costs. Doing a lot of projects all at once is going to put additional stress on our maintenance team. Are we, I know that the plan is to scale that team. We're not quite there yet. If we have to outsource some of this maintenance cost, has that been factored in?
Well, I think in an ideal world, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but I think in an ideal world, the type of maintenance that we would want to apply to these roads to extend their life would probably be almost entirely contracted out unless, ideally we get in a position where we're not really even doing grading and stuff anymore. And maybe we could purchase some equipment to do microsurfacing and stuff, but I would guess that most of that would all be contracted out. And I mean, we'll still need to be doing some potholing and stuff like that, but that's not really maintenance that preserves the life of a road.
I'd like to add, Alan's exactly right, in that currently your maintenance is, your dollars per square foot is intense. They're covering very, very few square feet with a lot of manpower. So what this will do is, with this, essentially, theoretically, in the same manpower, we'll be able to cover, blocks or miles for what the same manpower is covering for your potholes. I mean, just in very high level thinking in simplistic terms, that's one of the things I would see, and Alan's right, a lot of the maintenance would be contracted out, so the other staff on the maintenance department would focus on other things and get more things done. But I wanted to add that.
What would be an example of what you would contract out for, what operations?
I think for maintenance, probably chip seals, for example. It's probably not likely we would be running chip seal crews. We don't have enough
Right.
of that too, but that would be an example of a maintenance or a micro seal type of
Okay.
project that we could contract out. You can cover, as we know, miles of chip seal and micro surface for, just a few dollars.
Questions? We'll open it up to the public. Anybody from the public has some comments on this?
Hi, Terry Stewart again. So, first of all, I'd like to thank the Finance Director for a great presentation, and I think overall, I really like the concept. I do have some questions that kind of overlap what Councilman Kramer was speaking about. First of all, we're talking about tying up a whole lot of money for 15 years here. And it looks to me like right now, as near as I could tell from the presentation, we're getting $2.5 million a year from Measure V. We're gonna spend $1.5 million a year on debt service. That's gonna leave us $1 million a year. My question is, for this $15 to $18 million larger scale project, how many miles of street are we gonna rehabilitate or reconstruct, or whatever it is we're gonna do with all that? And how many miles are gonna be left that are crappy? And what's gonna happen with all those miles that are left? Because, it's been a long time since I've seen the figures, but as near as I remember, the city of Clearlake has over 100 miles of streets. Does anyone know about, city engineer, possibly? How many miles of streets our city has?
I think it's about 110 miles.
Okay, there you go. Pretty sure we're not gonna get 110 miles redone for 15 to 18 million. Does anybody actually know how many miles we are gonna get reconstructed in this project?
I'd love to give some more information to the council about that.
Okay, so I assume maybe we'll be hearing some more about all that. Anyway, I just want to put my concern out there that with $1 million a year left after we service the debt, is that going to be enough to maintain? And, I'm assuming we're still going to end up with some streets somewhere that are dirt roads that are going to need to be graded, have some gravel, maybe even some chip seal put down some. That's my main concern, is that we're not gonna blow all our dough and then have to pay for this over 15 years, and then over the term of that, we got little or nothing left to take care of the rest of the stuff. Because, of course, even after we redo the stuff that gets redone, as we've mentioned, there's gonna be upkeep costs over that 15-year span. So, thank you.
Thank you. Did I preempted you by that you wanted to do some more?
Well, I mean, maybe before we have any more questions about what projects, we should talk about them a little bit. What do you think? Okay, I'm going to share, if I can get this out of the way. Okay, so hopefully this will sort of work. I made a little bit of a map just here in Google Earth. So what you're seeing here is the city streets. Green, there may be a couple inconsistencies. This was created a couple of years ago. We haven't updated some of the more recent stuff, but the green streets are public and some form of pavement. Yellow streets are public, gravel or dirt streets, and red are private. And so, Mr. Stewart and others are right. We're not going to be able to generate enough money with this approach to pave every street in the city. This was a problem that was created over, I don't know, 60, 70 years of very little maintenance, and it's going to take a while to fix it. So what we've been doing is small sections. We've spent $1.5 million and some years $2 million on streets. A really rough estimate, which is not really the rule of thumb as much anymore, $1 million plus a mile for like a real reconstruction FDR type project. So we're doing a mile, mile and a half. You know, this area of the city we've done quite a bit over the last few years, but there's small little projects in here. And so to really take advantage of this financing, you know, you saw a number of ways to look at this, and then just because the present value of money now is higher than it's going to be again, there's savings to the city in that approach. But you know, we've also seen that the larger projects that we can bundle together, especially in one area, there's also a lot of additional savings as a result of that. So when we looked at the city, we came up with kind of some various ideas. The council doesn't have to decide now, and in fact, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but if you decide to move forward, we did talk to a transportation consultant that performs our pavement management plan, and they gave us a proposal to do some very specific analysis on the existing PCI of the streets and do some more recommendations on what might make sense so we could test out these theories. We just didn't want to spend, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 doing that unless we knew for sure the city wanted to move forward. So that might be an approach we'd want to take to kind of fine tune any proposals. But I'm going to turn this on. So these blue layers are kind of different projects. So we'll focus on the avenues first. We've done a lot. I mean, the avenues need a lot of help. We've done a lot there over the last few years. This whole area here was chip sealed last year, so we don't need to do anything there. And then there's some of this area over here that was chip sealed the year before. We are still planning on doing around 10 miles of chip seal this calendar year. Our crews are already doing grading in preparation for that. We haven't completely finalized the plan, but I think what we're leaning towards is trying to complete as much as we can in the avenues, and then we're also planning to do this area over here, which is north of like Foods, etc. This is West 40th, and the streets north of that. They're actually grading over there, I think, the last couple of weeks. So this section of the blue stuff you see is about 12 miles. So if we do the 10 miles, including this, there's still going to be a little bit left, and there's some sections, especially on this side of Phillips, where the topography is different and chip seal may not be as feasible, and we're going to have to do some more drainage work. So it may make sense to include a little bit of this area in with some larger projects. This section here south of Redbud Park, there's some streets in here that are really bad, high concentration of homes and stuff, and so this is another area that we identified it might be nice to focus on a little bit. We've been talking for years about doing something in the tree streets. The tree streets need a lot of assistance. There's drainage problems there, so just doing some chip seal in that area is not going to be sufficient because it won't last long. But it sounds like, you know, there's some options that we could, you know, we could move forward at a fairly reasonable rate to improve that whole section. And then I think maybe one of the biggest wins for us is basically doing almost all of Clearlake Park. You know, there's a real mix of streets up there. Some of them are in great shape, and some of them need a lot of attention. But because everything's so concentrated here, we get a lot of bang for our buck by mobilizing just in this area and trying to do pretty much all of it. Now, you can't see it as much here. You can see from the satellite photo, but we actually did, we have GIS files that have building footprints, and Kelsey mentioned, I don't know if you picked it up, but these blue streets, the homes that border on these blue streets, there's over 2,000 of them, as many as 2,300, and so you know, that's a pretty significant impact. So that's kind of what we were thinking. I mean, you know, there's been discussion about what do you do about the other things. There's a lot of other areas that need attention, right? It's just once we start picking off these little streets again, we're gonna lose, we could do that, we could take that approach. We feel like we're gonna lose a lot of the cost savings that we would get from like trying to really keep the projects in similar areas. So we have less mobilization costs, and there's just, it's a lot quicker for the contractor to do that. Now, you know, if you look back, I think we're gonna, if we move forward with this, we said, you know, 2 to 3 years, design, construction, that's our focus, is doing all these projects. We obviously don't want to be in the situation where we're sitting around for the next 12 years, not doing any projects with Measure V, right? But we know, based on just Measure P's history, with really no new retailers coming into town, that we've exceeded 4% growth in that tax revenue, and even through the Great Recession. And I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that we could expect that at least over the next 15 years, and that doesn't really factor in a lot of the projects that we have in the works that are going to generate additional sales tax revenue. So even at 1.5 million, I think, you know, we probably will take a little bit of a pause on some of the smaller projects in the next couple of years. But in looking at the numbers, I actually have a lot more confidence that there's still going to be revenue there to continue doing pay-as-you-go projects like we have been doing the last few years on some of these smaller projects around the city. Because, you know, we don't want this to be all that we get out of Measure V, and I think there's a lot more there.
Councilwoman Overton.
I mean, there's still the opportunities for, is there any opportunity, I know that residential homes are normally not opportunities for grants. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, you know, we haven't even talked about grant funding. I mean, there's projects like, maybe I'll just go back to this, some of the stuff that isn't included on here. You see in the park, this second MODOC right here, that's out to bid right now, it's all grant funded. And we'll continue to pursue those type of opportunities as aggressively as we have the last few years.
Questions for staff? Go ahead, Councilman Kramer.
Some of those outlying streets that I think were on the 5-year plan, is that how you would catch those streets if they're not in the grand plan to do all of the blue ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we've spent a lot, actually, I'm not sure how far, I was looking at it today, and like the plan goes out to 2030 something. And so, yeah, I mean, I think to the extent that we have additional resources, we would just go back to the plan that's in place, you know, kind of update it.
In that order?
Right.
2023, 24, those.
Vice Mayor Purdock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So originally, when this was presented, I had some significant concerns, you know, looking at the inflation rate, looking at the fuel costs. Obviously, everything we're talking about doing is based off of cost per barrel of oil. And I thought, is this the right time to be doing this? I appreciate the extra effort and your meeting with me and doing a little deeper dive to put that at ease. And I do also want to thank you for your comment. As we're doing a lot of these developments, particularly the airport property, and we look at other retailers that are coming in, we've seen steady growth in Measure P and V, and obviously we hope to realize that too. So to answer Mr. Stewart's question, I'm hoping that $1 million that we're looking at will continue to increase, and we would be able to do some of those smaller projects even with this funding in place.
Councilwoman Overton.
So I do, would like to see, if we move forward with this, that when we get into those areas that are some private roads, that maybe we talk to the owners of those private roads and see if there is a way we can incorporate their roads into, you know, into our project, because it may be cheaper for them, and if we can figure out a way to incorporate them, then I'm just giving a suggestion. It may or may not work, but I mean, it just seems like if we're working in an area and we have 10 regular roads and one private road, and they want it fixed, and that might be an opportunity to talk to them and see what we can do to work out to help get their roads done too.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, ideally, there will be a day when there aren't those private streets in the city. You know, we have such a hill to climb with the public ones right now that it's difficult for us to even think about that. But, you know, there's those streets, it gets brought up from time to time, just north of Olympic, kind of on the, as you come in to town on the eastern side there, that, you know, it doesn't look the best. I mean, there's nicer homes in there and stuff, but it's all private streets. And, you know, my hope ideally would be we really start getting our arms around enough of this that we could proactively start bringing some of those into the city and improving them. But we're kind of a long ways away from being able to tackle that on a very large scale right now. But your point might be another sort of solution that would help some of those folks get their streets improved.
Conversation doesn't hurt anything, it doesn't really cost anything, and so it might be an idea where you say, this is how much it would cost to do this road, or at least bring it up to a decent standard, and, you know, how many homeowners are there, and this is what the cost would be to each homeowner. I mean, we might be surprised in some of the areas anyway, that we might be able to get them on board. I'm not saying that everybody's gonna say, yeah, let's go for it, but I just always figured, since we're gonna be, if we're already gonna be in the areas, talking to the owners, that we need to find out if they want to, it just doesn't hurt. Some of them might just feel like is the time to do it, you know, so. We've been talking about it for so long that they might start kicking in and saying, yes, we want our property values to go up also, you know, because it does raise the property values, so.
Okay, Councilman.
Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I forget, I do also want to thank you, Madam Finance Director and Mr. City Manager, for inviting me in Monday morning to get a little bit more information and ask the questions that need to be asked. And I do feel a lot better. Your presentation tonight, I think, was excellent. I'd still have the question, however, on the design. What's the timing? How long do you think that it'll take to design all of these projects that we want to get out to bid by next spring? Oh, I don't know if that's a question for Mr. Swartz or.
Well, I mean, there's a few different ways we can approach it. I mean, we're in the process of developing, Ms. Young's getting ready to release a, what we call like a master RFP for design services. You know, we've been using California Engineering Company for a lot of our projects, but, you know, there's a limit to the ability to do some of that. So what our plan is to do this master RFP and actually be able to select multiple engineering firms. It's a way that some folks have approached it. Normally we just do an RFP for a certain thing and then do another one. But this is a way to save a lot of time, and we can have a list. We could have 3 or 4 different firms, and then we could select among them. So we could kind of decide on a firm's capability on whether they could do the whole ball of wax as one. I mean, there'd be some benefits to that. Maybe this is too big that we would want to split it up and use a couple of different firms, but I think that approach would give us a lot of flexibility in trying to get it done quick.
And one more question, hopefully, I don't know if you have an answer to it. All of the streets that are in blue, both the chip sealed type ones and the repave ones, how many miles of each of those are there?
So everything that you saw in the blue was 30 miles.
30
So some of that would be reduced roughly by 10 miles with the chip seal stuff. So, you know, we need to do a little bit more work on, you know, how much chip seal or microservice are we doing, because that's a lot cheaper. And then figure out, you know, we could be able to add a few more sections in or a little wider swath on some areas, depending on what the council selects. You know, you say we go, you know, to the max of 18 million, then we would take that number, figure out a little more detail on the project and see how far we can spread those dollars. But I think it's probably going to be in the 20 to 25 mile range.
Okay, do you have a guesstimate from that, a generalization, which I won't
totally hold you to, of how many $1 million that will take to do the whole thing.
Yeah, we tried to use a few generalizations, and I think it's a little risky to open my mouth, but it appears like the 20 miles, somewhere around 13 to 15 million would do it. So, but please don't hold me to that for sure yet.
Oh, you know I won't. All right, thank you.
Any more questions from staff? Oh, Councilman Claffey.
Yeah, just had a question. If we do this surprise, we have a ton of paved roads, what about the utility aspect of it? Have the water company and sewer companies been looped in?
Well, some of the water companies are probably not gonna be too happy about this, so, it's just gonna be a lot of work for them. I mean, you look at Clearlake Park, that's all Golden State, and they're gonna have to do some stuff, and upgrade some things, and adjust their meter boxes and all sorts of stuff.
Have you had any conversations with them about this?
No. Yeah. Yeah, they're generating a lot of revenue now in Golden State area.
Are there any concerns that their inability to move fast enough will cause us delays in these projects?
I don't know if you have any insight into, I mean, you know, we're working with them on 8 miles of it right now. And it doesn't seem like there's been any issues with them, but I don't know what thoughts you have. I mean, the good thing, if you look at this, I mean, the Clearlake Park is in Golden State, but some of the other areas are in other districts, so it's not just on one utility, but.
Yeah, I think, well, the first thing is if we were to move forward and define the project area, we would immediately notify and coordinate, and start the coordination meetings with Golden State to prepare them. Right. I'm not, and Alan says that they're probably not gonna be, I'm not gonna be on their Christmas list after that conversation, but that's okay. But you know, like, we're working with them now, and I'll cover a little bit of that later on, but they're developing a kind of a plan with Sulfur Fire right now and how we're gonna manage that, and I'll share that a little bit later. So I think it's doable. A bit uncomfortable, but that's the price you pay. That's what growth is. Are there other utilities that would be involved? Special districts would be involved, certainly, you know, with their sewer manholes, because they've got to be, on the FDR, the more intense rehabilitations, you've got to lower their services and then raise them back up. And to some extent, maybe some of the power companies, you know, like you'll see we're dealing with those, PG&E and AT&T now, but not to as great extent as the water and sewer.
All right. Yeah, if not, no more questions, staff, we open it to the public. Again, if anyone in the public wants to comment on this, I see Mr. Sabatier come to the podium.
Bruno Sabat, hello? Bruno Sabatier, City of Clearlake. I can't hear it, but it probably works and you can hear me. Mayor and council members, thank you so much for last time for being fiscally conservative and asking more questions. I was nervous, but also happy that this conversation came. I know that the conversation already arose early on with Measure V if this was something that was possible, but it was kind of pushed aside fairly quickly. And the new numbers, appreciate the numbers being provided. It feels like there's a less risky situation, but at the same time, you never know what the future can bring. But even then, doing it year by year, you also don't know what the future can bring at that point. Waiting 13 years or 12 years to get your roads fixed versus getting it done in 3 years, there's a huge difference in the way people will react to how this will change their environment. So I think that right there, shortening that time span is amazing for those that will be impacted. I think it will require you to have some great transparency with the rest of the city to ensure that, yes, we will continue, maybe not as fast as we've been going now, and here's the plan, reworking that plan all the way to 2032, just so that the rest of the city is aware that it's not over because of the amount of work that's been done. Here's what the next steps were. We're also recognizing that the other work wouldn't have happened until after 13 years anyways. And I think that it's just about being transparent with the whole process. There is one word I have not heard today that to me feels like, not the elephant in the room, but just this big thing that's here, but we don't really have a hold of it, and that's infrastructure bill. There is a lot of funding that is coming down the pike, both for the state, all for the state, the county, and the cities, and that has a lot of potential. And I know that Councilmember Overton kind of alluded to it, the idea of grants, and I know that we put away like 5% saying matching grants. If it's possible to match this, add on to this, anything from the infrastructure bill, now you're golden. So I think that there's a lot more money coming down specifically to help us out with things like roads that never existed before. And so I think you're in a more comfortable position at this moment in time to make these kind of things happen. I think this will stimulate higher values in our properties. I think this will stimulate what you've already begun with the additional businesses that are coming into town. So I'm much more comfortable, as both of you just exclaimed today, much more comfortable with what I'm hearing today than what I was hearing last week, and appreciate your caution and your conversation.
Thank you. Any additional public comment in the room? If not, are there anybody in Zoom land, Madam Clerk?
There's one hand raised on the Zoom, and that's Cheryl Allman. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Thank you. I'm on the Measure V Oversight Committee, and I want to acknowledge that we were looking at trying to put together a 5-year plan because of the cost to, one, engineer it, but also to bid it out and get competitive bids at a much lower price. Our initial annual size was so small that a lot of contractors' costs associated with just moving in people and equipment raised our prices significantly. So we were encouraging that group to look at a 5-year plan even there. But I am certainly in support of this. I have mentioned it to a couple of my neighbors, and I will tell you, I have only heard positive comments about moving faster and doing something sooner with the roads, even though they may not be the roads we live on. So with that, I just want to say I certainly would support this, and I think that more of our community might support it as well. I don't think we've heard any negative comments from people, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. All right, we have any more comments? If not, we'll bring it back to the council. Direction to staff. Are we consensus to?
We're looking for consensus? Yes, go ahead. Let's go.
I think you.
Okay, I would like a tiny bit more direction. What are you thinking on
The scale?
The scale, I mean, you saw a few different options. You know, there's a lot of them, a lot more even than what we presented. I do think that, you know, we're not recommending going beyond 1.5 million a year. In looking at this analysis we've done over the last couple of weeks, I'm more comfortable even with that than when we initially put it together. But and then we need to think about the term. We don't really think it makes sense to go beyond 15 years. Then we start getting to the end of Measure V anyway. And so that's kind of the high end. That's going to generate a little over 18 million to spend on projects. But if the council wants to take a little more conservative approach, we can dial back term and sort of annual payment. But I think, well, let's see what the reaction is there, and then we'll clarify the direction.
So, Councilman Kramer first.
So then following on that line, how much time would it take you to give a couple of options? 15 years or 13 years? And the number of miles of road that, you know, just so we can look at two options.
I don't know. It's going to take a pretty fair amount of work to do a detailed analysis of those options. But if that's what you want us to do, you can give us the options and we'll do it.
Okay, Councilwoman Overton.
Okay, so we have how many years left on Measure V?
What is it, 16 or 17, I
16,
think?
17.
16.
Okay. So
16
and
years.
if we went with 1.5 at 13 years, I would be pretty comfortable with that. That gives us a little leeway for me. I mean, I think that's good. We could still get a big projects done and yet still not be, too panicky towards the end. I don't want to drag it out to use the whole time. I think that would be kind of not a good thing to do in case on anything happens, we have a little bit of play money there to fix things if we need to be in the future. So, so we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but I do know that tomorrow's going to bring higher prices. So I've never seen it fail in my lifetime, and I don't think we're going to stop now. So for moving for the 13 years.
13 years, $1.5 million. Vice Mayor Purdock.
Yeah, I like the, between the 10 and 13, but I also wanted to remind people that the Measure V doesn't need to conclude. We wrote in the sunset, but that doesn't mean that the voters of Clearlake couldn't extend that as well.
Okay, it sounds like you have consensus about 13 years, 1.5. Is everybody kind of in there?
That it should generate about 15 million. Okay, so I'm gonna try to clarify what Mr. Scriven needs. So I think you need to give me authority for term sheet negotiation and accepting that so we can get the banks working and lock in a rate as soon as possible. And then it will come back to the council for approval of the legal documents. Is that right, Eric?
That's correct.
So that would be a motion or
That's just direction.
Just direction.
That's correct. During the negotiations, Alan?
Can you speak up again, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now, sir?
It's a little
Yes.
better, yeah.
Okay, I apologize. During the negotiations, we can really fine tune also with council's direction on term and size and proceeds that you want delivered for projects. We don't have to have that with precision this evening. I think that with the analysis that staff is going to do, that'll be helpful for you to pin that down. But we would like, we think it would be important for the city manager to have authority to enter into term sheet negotiations and with the idea that council will have another opportunity when they approve the financing documents after credit approval from the bank.
So we don't
Thank
have
you.
to have what part of that? I missed, the don't have to know the total amount?
We're gonna we could go out and give a range and a term length, an estimated term length to secure aggressive bank bidding. With the more precision that you can give us when we put our term sheet together or our bid solicitation to banks, that would be helpful. But we think time is of the essence, given what's been the volatility in the markets lately.
Agreed.
Okay.
Everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Go to city manager and council member reports. City manager, Mr. Flora.
Okay, I only have a couple of things. We celebrated Captain Sully's retirement last week. We had a good crowd here, and sad to see Captain Sully go. You know, he's put almost his entire career here into the city, including as interim police chief, and it was very touching to hear a lot of the stories and the impacts that he's made on other officers and community members. But he's very excited about being in Texas, and there was a lot of, didn't take him long to make it down there, so congratulations to him. We continue to struggle with some vandalism in the parks. We've, you know, a lot of problems with the bathrooms here. They are open again. The skate park's being closed again due to vandalism, and then the tennis courts are closed right now because the nets were vandalized until we can get some of that. Maybe that one wasn't, I mean, I guess it's kind of vandalizing. There were some kids wanting to, they used it as a a soccer court, and in doing so, removed the nets and destroyed all the stuff, so now we have to replace it. So that's unfortunate, but if you hear complaints from folks, we're doing the best we can to keep this stuff open, but the community really needs to take a little more pride in the investment. You may have seen some signs and stuff around town. I think there was a Nixle went out today, and there'll be another one going out, but Caltrans is finally repairing the Lakeshore Drive and Highway 53 intersection. There's a big section of really rough pavement there that's not in the city right away. And we've been complaining about it for a while. They're going to be coming out on Sunday, and they're going to do a hard closure of that intersection from 6 in the morning till 6 in the evening. But they plan to grind it all up and repave the entire thing that day. So that'll be nice. The 40th Avenue side is also in very poor condition. They're not going to be doing that. It's too much to do in one day, but he did promise that they're going to come back and get it done. So,
Is that weather permitting?
I guess, well, I think that we're supposed to be getting rain on Saturday, but I don't know about Sunday. Yeah, hopefully that doesn't deter us. As nice as it would be to get the rain. And then our city engineer wanted to give the council a little bit of an update on the Sulfur Fire project. We are expecting paving to start here relatively soon, and you know, that's going to cause its own issues and challenges with the neighborhood up there. And so Mr. Schwartz thought it would be helpful to provide some information to the council, because I'm sure, you know, some of you have been getting calls and stuff already. We want to just try to keep you as informed as possible.
Appreciate
and
that.
let you know what we are doing to try to make it as painless as we can.
So my objective would be, with Alan's permission from here on out, either myself or Dale or even Alan, I'll have a note sheet that I'll kind of update and just so the council is up to date on what's going on, because as we, you know, the easy stuff is done, let's call it. Now what we're going to be getting in is the real inconveniencing stuff for the next couple of months. And I know that you as council are going to be fielding calls as well as staff, but I think if you have an understanding of what we're doing behind the scenes and proactively, it will be much easier to handle those calls and complaints and kind of explain what's going on. So I thought I'd start, first of all, just give you a tentative schedule. Things are always subject to change a little bit, but this is what we know today. So right now, we're going to have what's called a pre-paving meeting. That'll be an on-site meeting, and that's next Tuesday on March the 22nd. They're going to be starting lowering manholes and utilities below grade on March the 23rd, which means that there'll be people out working in the middles of the streets, taking those surface elevations down for the FDR that comes through there. That'll last about a week and a half to 2 weeks. That won't create a whole lot of inconvenience, but some traffic obstacles, probably some speed reduction enhancement, you might call it. Looking at beginning the full depth reclamation on or about April the 4th, and that should be done about April the 27th. Full depth reclamation is when we're going to go through and kind of a tilling mechanism and introducing the concrete into the underlying soils, and then they'll do a micro cracking of that over, you know, kind of immediately there following. We're going to be doing some dig out repairs on mostly on Arrowhead, where those large sections of alligator or have occurred in order to repair the street. You hate to go spend all that money on a street when those cracks are probably likely going to show through. That's set to start on the 25th of April. And the HMA paving, the thing that we've all been waiting for, it should start between around the 4th of April and should complete about mid-May. I don't want to even give you a date on that, but about mid-May. So I wanted to kind of give you an idea of the schedule. We all know the challenges up there working on Lakeshore and San Joaquin and all the subsidiary roads up there. The roads are narrow. Most of them have limited shoulders, so it doesn't provide the contractor a way to kind of mobilize and move off the road. We're dealing with a lot of shallow utilities that are pretty old and been put in a long time ago. And then, of course, just the sheer size of the equipment that does that kind of work, it takes up the whole roadway. You can imagine on the upper end of San Joaquin what that's going to be like up there. It'll be impassable when they're up there working, quite frankly. So here's some of the action items, and I don't know that I'll cover these that much more unless you ask. I'll probably just put them in notes format, but here's some of the action items that we've been doing for the last month and continue to do aggressively. Number one, by doing the FDR, that's the tilling mechanism, what it does is normally what you would do is you'd excavate out the soils, and that means you got to bring all those trucks in there to haul the soils out. Then you got to haul the base rock in to replace the soils, okay? So there's a tremendous amount of trucking, right? So with FDR, you don't do that. There's a machine that goes through, it rototills the soils, and all that truck traffic is non-existent. We do have weekly coordination meetings, and at those coordination meetings, we have special districts, AT&T, PG&E, and Golden State Water. And lots of conversations ongoing about how we're going to handle certain things. There's going to be public outreach posted in the form of notices by the contractor on doors in advance of the paving on each day or each week, so residents will kind of know what's going on. There's always a big effort to get people to move their cars off the street. That won't be any different on this endeavor. And then, of course, the city will put out the nixle alerts, which I think are very helpful. We do have, each week, the contractor will be given a traffic control plan. So we're going to be, normally we look at a traffic control plan and we may not have a whole lot to say about it. These traffic control plans will be different. We'll have a whole lot to say about them because we're really going to be monitoring those and how they're proposing to route traffic. Because, you know, naturally, if you're the contractor, you're going to want to make the traffic control as easy as possible. And as easy as possible, number one, is just shut the street down, right? That's as easy as possible. So we'll have to work within the confines of that. Let's see, we're going to make sure that there is adequate signage and you know, the warning signs and the paving signs and all that stuff. We're going to have the contractor make a concerted effort to get those up sooner than later and kind of give people fair warning. Luckily with San Joaquin and Lakeshore, there's ways you can get around things. It's a little bit inconvenient. Golden State, as I kind of mentioned earlier, you know, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be mobilized on site. And what Golden State and the contractor have done is they've gone through and done a very aggressive potholing plan. Potholing means they've excavated down to the tops of their utilities to try to understand the location and the depth of that utility. When you bring this big equipment through, and sometimes the utilities may not be as deep as you would hope, you'd like to see water lines at 36 inches deep or 30 inches. Well, as we found on many Measure B projects, they're sometimes 2 inches deep or 4 inches deep, and that causes a big problem. And when that equipment hits it, it causes an even bigger problem, and there's delays and all kinds of things going on. So we're actually supposed to be getting a very detailed potholing results sometime tomorrow, we're hopeful, and we're going to sit down and really examine where these shallow utilities are, and we're going to attempt to make the best mitigation plan we can for what we do know anyway on how we're going to handle these. And then we'll be meeting with the contractor on Tuesday and again on Wednesday of next week to kind of go over and discuss what that plan is and get buy-in from them, of course. The other thing that Golden State Water is going to be doing, they're going to have people mobilized on site each day. They're going to know where we're going to be, and they're going to shut off half of their valves each day ahead or behind of the paving. So that means if they've got their valve shut off, say, behind the paving or the FDR, and there's an issue, they'll already have a guy posted out in front. So all he has to do is basically shut off one valve, and the water system is immobilized at that particular time, and we can deal with it. That alone can save an hour or two of time and tens of thousands of gallons of water and lots of delays. And then, of course, Green Valley Engineering, who is doing the construction inspection, they're going to mobilize, and I think they're going to have 3 or 4 additional inspectors on site. Right now, they just have 1. That's all that's really required. But they're going to have other inspectors available on site to kind of help manage and get this operation going. We're going to try to keep it as smooth as possible. for an engineer and guy who in construction like myself, this is my nervous time. You know, I'm painting my house now. I hope the color's right, type of thing. But I did want you to know, you know, and I won't go through this detail like this again unless you ask me to, but we're going through enormous efforts to try to make sure we mitigate and minimize the disruption to the residents and minimize the disruption to change orders and delays and get this and make this as successful as possible. So that's really what I wanted to let you know.
Just from a personal thing, a lot of people are really excited. I think they understand that the hardest time is still coming.
Agreed.
Thank you.
But they are very excited.
I'm excited.
All right, council report, we'll go from Mr. Kramer. Councilman Kramer, anything exciting
Mayor,
during the last couple of weeks?
Well, I have been to APC meeting last week. Seems like we're on a weekly basis on the Lake Links meetings. APC, LTA, I would like to think that the Highway 53 corridor plan is moving along as quickly as we're moving the Sulfur fire plan along, but it isn't. They're still haven't finalized it, and it just seems like every week or every month they have another excuse why it's not yet done. Lake Links, we're working on various grants to extend or maintain and extend our volunteer driver programs. We've asked for letters of support. Councilwoman Overton was good enough to give us one, which hopefully will help us to, along the way, to get these several grants that we're applying for. That's about all I have for now.
All right, Councilwoman Overton.
Yeah, not a whole lot. It was our pleasure to help support that. We're also working with Lake Links, hopefully for something for Anderson Marsh and Transportation. They're going after a grant. It would be nice if we can all combine and do that and get that support, so that they're looking at doing trying to get a grant to do something out there like at least 3 or 4 times a year and be able to bring people out there and do tours of the facility, education and everything. I'm kind of hoping that really goes through for them. We had the marketing committee, but I'll let David say anything that we need to do. He's our chair there. And the only other thing I really want to mention is the mystery dinner for the senior center has been postponed till June 3rd. And don't forget to get your corned beef tickets from from Councilmember Kramer.
Can I have a do-over?
So support your local Lower Lake Action Agency and purchase their they're doing a fundraiser, but if you want to do a do-over, go ahead. So and the League of Cities is
as council.
Can I just finish? Let me just finish up first, please. Thank you. And then the League of Cities is next Friday, and if you guys is there anybody going to that? No? Okay.
I haven't planned on it.
Sarah just kind of wanted to update.
The one in Ukiah?
Too bad, it's so close. It's really been
Okay.
nice to have it.
Yeah, as
Councilman Kramer has a
As
do-over.
Councilwoman Overton mentioned, Lower Lake Community Action Group has its annual, it is annual, corned beef and cabbage dinner. It will be on a drive-through basis. It's be this Saturday from 4 to 6. Tickets are still available, $25 each. Goes to, it's a fundraising effort, of course, to fundraise for scholarships and the things that we maintain. And I guess it's probably would be appropriate to mention the Park Study Club also has a fundraising effort coming up, and they're pretty important to the city, and in that they provide us with a new, very, very large flag every year with their efforts. So,
Plus the scholarships that they give to the
Yeah,
kids.
plus the scholarships,
All
so-
over Lake County now, we do the whole Lake County now.
we should really support them. Even if you don't want to go to their high tea, you can give them some money to help them out, as I did.
All right, Councilman Claffey.
Yeah, I was hoping I had the high tea flyer in my bag, but I do not. But I know I will be there because I have someone who loves tea. I had the pleasure of attending the abandoned vehicles meeting. I'll let Vice Mayor Parduk speak on that. The marketing committee meeting, we continue to explore different ways to scale our marketing power for the city and promote some of the really great work that city staff is in the process of doing. I think the meeting that I most enjoyed was the ability to sit in today with the Community Vision Forum, that group, and have a chance to hear from our consultant on that matter. I think she came across as incredibly skilled, and I appreciate, Dirk, that, or Mr. Mayor, you leading the charge on that. And that's it.
Vice Mayor Purdock.
Thank you, sir. As Councilmember Claffey introduced, we had our AVA meeting. I was very pleased, particularly because present was our city manager, our chief of police was listening in. We had 3 code enforcement officers. Abandoned vehicle abatement is a big issue for us and throughout the county. So it was really good to have everybody there. We're going to continue having, per AB 361, Zoom meetings so people can listen in and participate if they would like to do that. Talking about hopefully another vehicle amnesty to try to reduce some of the trouble and difficulty in getting vehicles abated. So I'm anxious to hear what the committee comes back to in our next meeting and the ability to do that. And then we also approved the audit to be done and financing that. So that's about it for me, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I missed the LAFCO meeting, but I got a briefing from Supervisor Sabatier about the big item on the agenda is the Lakeport, South Lakeport annexation. And I think we have another meeting on it in about a month or so. So hopefully I'll be able to attend that. I did meet with the mayor of Lakeport for the mayor's appointment thing, and we only this time only one seat on LAFCO, but we did talk about the airport thing that Mr. Kramer or Councilman Kramer has continued to be on that and I'm the alternate on that. And then I also attended the visioning forum today. Thanks again for supporting that effort, and there'll be more to come on that. That's my report. And obviously, this program is live, and I understand there's already people applying?
Yes, we have actually received almost 20 applications already.
Wow.
Fantastic.
That is awesome.
And we've had people calling in, and I've even been like stopped on the street. So we're seeing a lot of interest. It's very exciting.
Very good.
Very good. That's my report.
Can I got to do over?
Okay, go ahead.
I want to thank the city staff. Mr. Stewart may back me up on this, but when I pulled in to come to this meeting tonight, there was so much activity across the street at the park. Kids playing soccer, doing other things. The exercise equipment, Mr. Mayor, that the Rotary Club and everybody partnered in. Loads of activity going on there. It's such a great thing to see. I'm very disappointed in the vandalisms that are taking place. I'm sure our chief is brilliant, and I'm sure he's working on a plan right there to help resolve that. But it's very disappointing. No pressure, chief.
No pressure.
But we got all our faith in you, sir.
We have, don't we have a way that we can chase the geese off?
We don't expect you to do that, chief. Just
If the, if that device would work on vandals, we would deploy it in other areas.
I didn't say that. Go ahead, chief.
I did want to say something, but it has absolutely nothing to do with that.
Go ahead.
But sort of an update. So I was dealing with this situation outside the Hope Center, and I just want to bring to the council's attention every once in a while when homelessness comes up, you guys will ask, like, well, how effective is it, that sort of thing. Without going into this situation, it was really nice to be able to talk with the staff there, the manager and so forth, to deal with the situation, but most importantly, that coming from an agency that's an active partner, right, with the contribution that you guys authored, that we truly are a partner with them, and to be able to work together. So I just wanted to share that. I think it's, you know, it's a difficult situation. It affects many people in the community, both those experiencing homelessness, those also experiencing the results of that on the community. So I just wanted to thank you for that investment there, having that resource, and just share like a good story out of there. So thank you.
Speaking of good stories,
Go
they
ahead.
were able to secure some funding, and they're doing a beautiful mural
saw that.
on one of the walls at Hope Center. Hope people could drive by. It's going to be beautiful, obviously, when it's done, but quite the project, and it's good to be a part of that.
Since didn't have a do-over, I can just continue going. It's awesome to see that construction is going on for our corporation yard.
Yeah.
Again, it's been the road being graded, water line is tapped into, and it's exciting to see that. I think for the community, I've gotten a lot of feedback on that everybody's excited about it, so.
Even more excited to see those fields start to get built this
No
summer.
kidding.
It's incredibly distracting driving through the city right now between murals and store signs going up and construction and road work.
Better
It's just a
get used
pain.
to it.
Yeah.
There'll
For
be
about
more
at
to
least the
come.
next 3 years, huh?
Yeah.
So when somebody
All right.
complains, we can say, this is progress that you guys wanted, right?
That's right. We'll go to future agenda items. Any future agenda items from anybody in the council? If not, we're adjourned to closed session.